Wall.
Thank you.
You're back in the nest of authoritarian control freaks. What's it like?
Well, as Maxwell Smart used to say, we're living in danger every minute. We're being blacked out, threatened by security, threatened to be thrown out, threatened violence, but we're loving every minute of it. This has been a situation where we go around in the media room, Lord Monckton and I, and almost to the mainstream media of the West is not interested. They look at us as though we're some kind of aliens. Our simple pitch is we're global warming skeptics that are at this conference, and we're here to condemn it. Would you like some balance in your reporting? All the mainstream media is not interested, but the developing world media is interested. And I'm talking about Chinese media, South African media, Indian media, and some other African media we did. It's amazing how the developing world is so receptive to this message. In fact, we're on the front page of the South African newspaper.
Wow.
The only climate skeptics at this conference. So they get it. But the other media, we had a press conference on Wednesday where I released the Climate Depot A to Z report, and I literally, from every letter of the alphabet, their claims not only are failing to materialize, the evidence is going the opposite direction. We were heckled by UK Guardian reporters. We were heckled by UN delegates. We were heckled by Greenpeace, who planted them in there. The UN made us start the press conference late, and they stopped us, cutting our time short. They did not want us there, but we persevered. We made our presentation, the 61-page report, to the United Nations, and I told reporters there that this is now the level of medieval witchcraft. Everywhere you look at the UN, it says more floods, more drought, more tornadoes, more hurricanes, and they all say we must act to stop this. They actually believe, like the Aztecs, that we can slaughter people and have acts of legislation to change the weather. The UN has reduced itself to medieval witchcraft at this point, where they're claiming they can control the weather. This is the most bizarre conference of all of them that I've attended. They've really morphed into we can control the weather. Now, it's not even really that much about global temperatures anymore.
Well, yeah, they teach school children there shouldn't even be seasons now, and they cry whenever they see housing developments. I have family this has happened to. They say they're murdering the bunny rabbits. I mean, it's incredible brainwashing. Now, I was talking to Lord Monckton, obviously, a few minutes ago, who's there with you, and he was describing this as violent death throes. Do you concur with that analysis? And what's the overall spirit of these people?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to pretty much every conference since the Earth Summit in 2002, and then they've always picked exotic locations. They've been Bali, Indonesia, and South America. And this is by far the conference with the least amount of energy, the least amount of interest, and a total of boredom has set in, because everyone knew going into this that there was going to be no world leaders there. President Obama didn't come. There were no Hollywood celebrities. Angelina Jolie, Leonardo DiCaprio, Harrison Ford, even Al Gore were all supposed to be here, and none of them showed up. And this is just, it's in the death throes. And I think what's happening now is a retooling of this entire environmental thrust. And the Rio conference, which I believe will be the end of May into June of 2012, is going to be a shift where climate is now going to be rolled into the larger issue of sustainable development, species deforestation. And in a way, this serves the UN purposes much better, because instead of just focusing on the atmosphere and industry, now they can control the oceans, now they can control roadways, land use, agriculture, you name it. Under that rubric of sustainable development, they can cover it all. And we cannot ever forget that it was Republican presidents who got us into this. The first George H.W. Bush in 1992 went to the first Earth Summit and committed the United States to these United Nations treaties, which then led to Kyoto, which then led the second George Bush, sent Colin Powell to the Earth Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, which I was at. The Bush family has done more to commit the United States to environmental and United Nations lunacy than all the Democrats combined. And we have to look at our two top nominees, and we have to get terrified. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich are incapable of standing up to the United Nations, of standing up to the International Green Movement. Mitt Romney, who had John Holdren as an advisor, is clueless. Newt Gingrich who has a new book coming out next year, has a climatologist named Catherine Hayhoe, who is a committed and embarrassing global warming alarmist. Don't be fooled for a moment by Newt Gingrich's recent sounding of skepticism. Neither of these candidates are equipped to handle this, and it will be nothing more than a continuation of the disastrous policies of Bush 1 and Bush 2 if either of these Republicans get in.
Well, it's good to see you fired up, and I've never seen you quite like this. Certainly, you can smell blood with these fraudsters. Of course, it was at the Rio de Janeiro conference, as you know, it was at 92, where Maurice Strong publicly said, we're going to have a post-industrial world. We are going to shut down the United States. We are basically going to carry all of this out. And that is exactly what they were basically able to do. So looking at this, I wanted to bring up a couple of positive points that I've seen here in the U.S., and that is the EPA on its own came out and said we're going to shut down most of the coal power plants, of course, those that aren't owned by insiders like General Electric. Obama's had to back off on declaring carbon dioxide, at least from those, as deadly nerve gas poison that plants breathe, but still he's moving ahead with some of the shutdowns. And, of course, you know, the EPA was going to declare hay dust and any type of dirt or dust on your farm as $10,000 fines, first offense. Just a total way to shut down small farmers and ranchers. The House passed by a giant margin today. The Hill newspaper's reporting that they're not going to do that. I mean, this is clearly just a way for this government mafia to make breathing evil, dust on a farm evil. I mean, it is so incredible. But more and more people are realizing that this is a selective economic warfare attack by people that have said they want a post-industrial world and who've always hated the free market and capitalism.
Yeah, this is death by bureaucratic bean counters. They're going after our ice makers on our refrigerators. They've gone after our dishwashers. Our dishwashing liquid now has to be green and therefore not cleaning. They've gone after the washing machines. They've sapped the water and the power. They've gone after our toilets, our shower heads. The Japanese government's telling the citizens they have to go to bed early to prevent global warming. The UN chief has said people can't order ice water in restaurants because of the carbon footprint. This is the level of control that George Orwell didn't contemplate. He who controls carbon controls life, and I will add to that with the Rio Earth Summit coming up. He who controls carbon and controls land use policy and even the oceans controls the world, and that's what they're going for. And this isn't conspiracy talk. This is in their documents. We're looking at this document. One of the most hilarious things about this 138-page document that Lord Monckton wrote about was they want to stop wars, not because wars are bad for people, not because wars are bloody, but they want to stop it because of wars' impact on the atmosphere. In other words, the greatest reason not to fight a war is concern over climate change and global warming. This is the level of absurdity we've reached.
All right, we're getting a bit of a Skype breakup there from Durban, South Africa, but that's okay. It's great to even have your audio. It's kind of like an old Star Trek episode where we're talking to you from 20 light years away, and it's breaking up a piece a bit. Going from memory, they're going to pull it up, and we might even cut the video in. A few months ago, we went to one of the Smart Growth conferences here in town, and they had, I think the head of the Nature Conservancy was there, and Mark Tursick, head of the Nature Conservancy, and they went up to him and said, we'd like to speak to you about coal, because they were there saying shut down coal. And when they brought up, hey, well, Obama said, you know, in that video clip that he wanted to bankrupt coal, what's your view on that? And he said, whoa, I'm not talking to you, interview over, and ran off like he was a vampire confronted with a giant silver cross. I mean, used to these people would get on the offensive if you got on the offensive. Now they just turn tail and run, and more they don't have that crazed power seizing look in their eyes. They're trying to regroup, as you said, and move on to
I mean, major environmental and climate organizations are shutting their doors. They're firing staffers. Climate stock exchanges are collapsing. This was truly subprime science, subprime economics, subprime politics. But we can never count them out, because there's never any previous environmental scare that had this kind of funding, backing of the UN, or backing of the media. It's unprecedented. So it doesn't just die. And the head of the UN, Rajendra Pachauri, of the climate panel, is on record as saying Global warming is but a symptom of a larger problem, and that larger problem is sustainable development and species extinction. They're already on record as doing the great shift. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to regroup. Climate's not going to go away, but it's going to be part of a larger picture where they're going to go after every conceivable way that human beings interact. And as the former founder, co-founder of Greenpeace, Patrick Morris, said, the modern environmental movement today is the most anti-human agenda that we have. We have, at the UN conference, they had torches, solar torches they were trying to peddle for sub-Saharan Africa. People living in huts made of dung aren't offered coal-fired power plants, which Obama and other environmentalists prevent, but they're offered solar panels, solar torches to read by at night. This is the perverse way, and there are actually people like Governor Brown in California who believe the developing world can't develop. The environmentalists tell them they can't have what we have. Darn, they missed it, but we've already raped the earth, and they can't rape it either. They can't make it.
Well, look, you've been studying this as long as I have, but I've read all their literature. We've got hundreds of their books that I've read, Aaron Dykes has read here in our office in the last decade. I've made films on it. The lower level people mean well or useful idiots like supporters of Lenin and Stalin or Hitler. But at the higher levels, they say, look, well, there are too many people. We're going to get rid of these brown scum. You know, Margaret Sanger said, we got to hire blacks as our front so we can kill these weeds. Well, we'll say we're liberal. You know, we, the American Nazis, in their words, have to pose as liberal to get away with this and not let them know that. And that's what it is. It's a death sentence. At the higher levels, it's about, and they say it, blocking the third world from developing, which, by the way, actually makes people have less children, but they don't care. It's just about cold-bloodedly blocking their development. And so at the top, from my research, these are knowingly extremely virulent, racist people. You know, look at Obama, you know, increasing the funding for abortions in Africa. These are very, very sick people. From your research, have you found parallels to that, or do you disagree?
No, absolutely. In fact, Obama's science advisor, John Holdren, has actually said, first of all, cheap energy is one of the hazards of a free society. And secondly, and most shockingly, he's on record. We dug up old newspaper clippings from the early 1970s that aren't available on LexisNexis or Google. And that John Holdren was vociferously opposing the agricultural revolution of Norman Borlaug that brought agricultural and ended famine throughout Asia in the late 1960s, 1970s. John Holdren opposed it because he didn't want the earth to be able to sustain that many extra people. Here was a classic example. When confronted in life, you have a choice. John Holdren chose death. John Holdren chose anti-technology. Norman Borlaug went on to win the Nobel Prize. It was one of the most celebrated scientists of our age, a man who probably saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. And he just died a few years ago. He was also a global warming skeptic. But Norman Borlaug was a hero. John Holdren was a eugenicist who now is feted by the mainstream media and Obama. So it's exactly what is going on, and these people are in high office right now.
Unbelievable. But we are seeing the mainstream media's decline right along with government's approval rating, right along with the climate panic pushers. I mean, certainly their fleeing forward, I think, is only going to destroy them in the end. In closing, tell us some of the key things we should look at in this latest power grab where they cast themselves as saviors of the earth, when in truth they're eugenicists cutting off the power supplies and conscripting many people I think the biggest thing coming out of this conference is this now. They're itching to get this international climate court set up. And this court, if they succeed in doing this, it's going to be, as Lord Monckton said, a kangaroo court. But think about it. They've already got set up the mechanisms. In England, they already have government officials monitoring employees. They're proposing carbon ration cards, your home energy use, your car mileage.